From the Army Rapid Capabilities Office. Again, welcome to TechNet 2018. We were here last year, a year ago, kind of doing the same thing, looking at specific areas. So just real quick, just want to introduce a few folks. Mr. Jack Dillon, who's going to be talking about some cyber efforts, and kind of really that's what the thrust of TechNet is. So it's really good to kind of have that conversation here. And Miss Nancy Jones-Bondbress, who's our public affairs POC. So if there's any specific questions that we may want to address that may not be able to address here, we'll work it through Nancy and get that out to the larger community. So why we're here. What we want to cover is the why, the who, the what, and a little bit of the somehow on how the Army Rapid Capabilities Office is doing things. Look to have a little question and answer. Go through a couple slides here. Don't want to bore you on slides, but really the question and answer, and like General Crawford was talking about this morning, it's interactive and intellectual conversation we want to have, and really, questions about the topics that we're putting out here, as well as really anything else that you guys may want to actually talk about, reference the Army RCO. And all right. So as you heard this morning, and a little bit of yesterday too from General Crawford and General Fogarty, we've been on a hiatus for the last 15 years or so, kind of advancing a lot of technology. So that's, as you look at near-peer threats, Russia, China, they're investing heavily compared to our investment in certain areas, as well as things like laser, hypersonics, and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, overall, China has that national strategy, and they're really pushing overall industry, academia to really focus in implementing a holistic capability across the board, from cyber to other aspects. Some things that, for instance, like lasers, things that we're focusing on from the laser aspects, Counter-UAS, they're looking at other more strategic type of effect for lasers. So we want to look at things that are a little bit bigger in the portfolio, pushing the bounds of what's possible, and providing that to the forces. And hypersonics is another one. I think I just read Lockheed just got one of their contracts awarded in hypersonics. They just got that awarded, but Russia, China, they're investing heavily in those areas. So now how do we do that from an offensive perspective? How do we do that from a defensive perspective? So we want to think about that as a community and leverage what the real intellect in industry is to help us do that. So really, who we are. So this is a little bit of the Army Rapid Capabilities Office on who we are, and really, probably some of you have seen this before. For those that haven't seen this is kind of just a little refresher, or new to you. Our focus is at the strategic level. So we get our direction from what's called the Board of Directors, the Secretary, the Chief, and the AE. They're giving us that direction to move out on an idea, on a gap, on leveraging something that may be in program's pipeline, or leveraging something that's in industry and bringing that forward a little bit more rapidly. The biggest thing we want to focus on are the highest of the Army's priorities. So we'll work those priorities with the chief and the AE and the secretary, and bring them those ideas and kind of rack and stack them to say, all right, this might be a ref activity, this might be staying in the programs line, or this might be something we could get at. The biggest thing that we could do there is, though, we're going to be doing those activities a little bit by pushing the envelope, doing things a little bit differently, but still doing things through the acquisition process that's there, but having the board of directors being able to give us that leverage to be able may be able to do things a little bit differently. So for instance, the RCO is kind of growing from the aspect of being able to do contracting somewhat in-house, bringing folks in to help support that. So those are things that are making us a little bit different than traditional PEOs. Uniquely manned, that's the cross-functional teams that are being stood up now. They're doing that across the larger Army and the priorities from the chief. But we're doing that also internally to the RCO and focusing on specific projects, so bringing subject matter experts in to help look at things like lasers, things like hypersonics, et cetera, and some of the other focus areas that I'm going to talk about over the next couple slides. And broad partnerships. So the Army's not going to do it alone, so we'll look at other agencies, other services. We're doing some things now with the Air Force on doing some sensor-to-shooter efforts, bringing some Air Force sensors down to the Army shooters. So leveraging capabilities across DoD, across really any of the services or agencies that are out there. So you folks may have seen this last time, electronic warfare, cyber, PNT, et cetera, were our current focus areas. We're looking and exploring other opportunities and some other things, like I was saying, lasers, hypersonics, et cetera. But last time we were here, we talked about electronic warfare and artificial intelligence and how you apply that, some alternatives to position, navigation, and timing. And I'll talk about, towards the end, kind of some of the outcomes of those talks. We've had some challenges in the sense of putting a problem out there to industry academia and awarding some winners on looking at how to apply artificial intelligence to the electronic warfare space. So that's just actually completing last Monday was the final submission date for that challenge. So we're going to be announcing the winner soon out of that. And like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about cyber today and basically our long-range fires and survivability. Those are just areas that are of always interest to the RCO. So some other areas that you guys might not have seen before, have heard before, that we're starting to look into. We're starting to look in some of the future comms or different types of narrowband comms that might be out there, or LPD, LPI types of comms. So those are areas that are now of interest to the ETO, especially within the RCO, because we're starting to explore what those different types of mechanisms could be to either layer it in as a fallback, I'll use that lightly, in the A2AD environment, et cetera, or some comms to get specific messages out for either it be a medevac type message or whatever. Robotics, we're looking at some robotics in the space of employing logistics and maintenance to heavy platforms. So that's kind of the area we're starting to look into, is like, how can you use robotics to help with, replacing an engine or, doing the tank treads. Those things are man-intensive. You might be able to do that a little bit faster with some robotics that either are a part of the platform or could be augmented by users. Maybe it's, I don't know, is it a user suit, kind of thinking about the SOCOM suit? Is that something that's viable for operations? Conformal antennas. So from the profile of a vehicle, how can you look at how you leverage conformal antennas to help reduce that profile? Electric drives and drivetrains. Commercial automotive industry is starting to go this way, and really even heavy machinery. Caterpillar's doing it. A whole host of folks are doing it from heavy machinery. Can we leverage that type of technology combat platforms to make it either more logistically easier to help maintain, or what can that do? And then, like I mentioned before, high energy lasers or directed energy is definitely a new focus area for the RCO. So anything in these spaces are starting to become more of a broader portfolio for the RCO, as you could see, but we're also looking to bring new technologies in that might be not specifically leveraged today, like electric drives and drivetrains. And that's me. I'm done. Turn it over to Jack.
Sure. Okay. So I'm going to take over and then give it back to Rob in a few minutes. My name, again, as Rob said, I'm Jack Dillon, the cyber lead here for RCO. So I'm going to talk about that box that was second from the left on the top, a little bit about cyber and what the RCO is thinking about and getting into. Just for the sake of introduction, before this job, I spent 6 years at Army Cyber Command doing DCO business, capability advocacy. Before getting that bug, I had to be an acquisition nerd, so I came to the Pentagon to join the acquisition community. But this, with the RCO really having a renaissance this summer under the new director, Tanya Skeen, excited about what the RCO is going to do for the cyber community in the Army. So it's also it's nice to be able to do these presentations following people like General Fogarty, so that we can incorporate the latest and greatest into these discussions, and it's actually pretty interesting. I'm the cyber lead, but just as General Fogarty talked about the need to converge and integrate across space, cyber, EW, intel, same here. This isn't cyber for cyber's sake. We're working together as a team to deliver solutions where cyber can intersect with the physical world. And ultimately to get after what he talked about, the sensing, understanding, the poor man's OODA loop, if you will. But so I'm going to attempt to talk about some of the principles that Rob talked about, the things that RCO has at its disposal to do acquisition rapidly for cyber, and then get into some of the areas that we're focusing and looking to focus. And I'm sensitive to the fact that this is a difficult discussion. Cyber is kind of a crowded space. RCO is new to the cyberspace anyway, even though we've been here for a couple of years. So I wanted to give you a quick vignette on the struggles that I've had. So when I was the capabilities lead at RCyber, we were just making sure I had the clicker correct. We were trying to describe to a group of senior leaders the vision for how we were going to maneuver in cyber, from your kind of your big cloud-based big data analytic capability. That's actually depicted as something called Gabriel Nimbus, but if you have a question about that, that's in our PM DCO portfolio. But that would connect to a distributed storage and compute environment, very thoughtfully architected, such that we could then correspond across what this represents as a rudimentary SATCOM network, ultimately to get down to our warfighters and have a very thoughtful architecture for data storage, analytics, transport, such that decision makers could make informed decisions at every echelon. Thinking I did a pretty good job, I asked for any questions, and the question I received was, is that a hamburger? So after today, I would say if I leave you with that sentiment, then consider that an invitation for a one-on-one. So getting into the cyber-specific kind of focus, as Rob said, strategic priorities, and we have built-in tools to go rapidly as the RCO. Generally speaking, the Army community has established DCO, OCO, PCTE, the training environment, and then cyber SU is the newest as DCO, OCO, and PCTE to get after enabling and equipping the cyber mission forces. Cyber SU starts to get towards providing the battle space awareness to the actual commanders in the lower echelons. And as to echo General Fogarty, we are absolutely working the relationships and the dialogue with both the operational users of those systems across Army Cyber Command, the new modernization formation, the CFTs and the Army Futures Command, as well as the existing trade identity here for Gordon, the Center of Excellence, to really understand across that portfolio what makes sense for RCO to either prototype to help refine a requirement to then cut into the existing program, or to, if it makes sense for us to take on as a kind of a acquisition program for ourselves that ultimately is worked in coordination. But now, to echo General Fogarty, in the green box, it's really about the convergence. And so where RCO is also focusing and having dialogues is how we and what the requirements are, how we meet those requirements for the new frameworks that exist with the multi-domain task force, IQs, which I think I spelled it out, Intelligent Cyber Electromagnetic Warfare Space Element out in the Pacific, as well as what Army Cyber Command is establishing this year, which is the Cyber Warfare Support Battalion. These are formations that are going to generate needs that aren't going to be specifically designed for what we had spent the last 5 years building, which is a framework to equip our cyber forces, but it's now expanding that to the rest of the warfighting formation. So we're part of that dialogue, and as General Fogarty described yesterday, and has been the discussion here at this conference, we're interested in those discussions and what types of capabilities we could enable and prototype where there may be gaps from the program community now. The second bullet is rapid prototyping, as we've talked about, in unique acquisition authority. I would say unique is a specific word. It's not magic acquisition authority. It's unique. It's tailored for all the reasons that Rob described earlier. And we can talk a little bit more about that later. And then I would say kind of bullet number 3, and then this, if you happen to see me in Baltimore at the DCO Symposium, I'm sure you follow everything I say online. This looked a little different. I think it was focused more on taking earlier stage technology and rapidly maturing it to get to the warfighter faster. In this case, we have since then 2 months of learning. We've expanded that to be kind of anything in that space that has a critical need, whether it be early stage or later stage. There's a number of factors that are going to determine that, and I think we've come a long way in having those dialogues with the PM community, and the user community, and the user representative community to understand what that is. So I will go to this next chart now that we've talked about principles to kind of the focus areas, and at least going to, hopefully this doesn't come across like a hamburger, but I hope to at least start a discussion that can carry over into Q&A and one-on-ones. So the cyber domain, for a long time, we've always kind of recognized it as gray, red, and blue, gray, and red, and we've had a number of ways to describe it. We've used infrastructure, platform, payload, especially on the offensive side. Our respective, the Center of Excellence here at Fort Gordon has decomposed the DCO, and OCO into their own set of requirements under those JACES umbrellas. And then we have Unified Platform, which is represented by the purple in the middle, where we have some new terms that really start to integrate these disparate efforts across the services. And then, so we have all of the programs, so DCO, OCO, that enable you to essentially do the OODA loop, whether you're in blue, gray, or red space. So as RCO, in the spirit of convergence and integration, one of the areas we are pursuing is where we can enable the convergence of cyber in something like space or EW to enable. That's what this poorly represents, is just that generally speaking, it's cutting cyber into the physical world, the non-kinetic space, so that we can make cyber capabilities, especially on the offensive side, more reliable, but also to extend on the defensive side and into the spectrum in the EMS. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to partner with the existing PMs to do that, and would be interested in your ideas on how we do that. One of those things is Internet of Things. So a whole new set of opportunity to understand the battle space and also vulnerability to protect against. In this case, this could be large scale. How do we sense forward from an offensive perspective? But this also could be very small scale. And how do we use more non-traditional IP-based sensing techniques, like there's a DARPA program called Leveraging the Analog Domain for Security, which is really getting after, I would call it side-channel EMS monitoring to ultimately detect cyber threats. So I think that's an area on both sides that we are absolutely interested in pursuing, and then maturing and cutting into the existing programs that we have in the Army. I would highlight surveillance and reconnaissance, and those familiar with what the Center of Excellence is doing and the offensive portfolio, we have an actual program called Cyber Surveillance and Reconnaissance. I'm not talking about that specifically, but I am talking about that, and just in general, we believe that that's a foundational capability. We are, I think, growing as a force where we have to have knowledge to do targeting, to drive intel. Intel drives operations, but we have to be able to work in a rapid way with a new set of authorities based upon the ability to sense, analyze, and then target while interfacing at the requisite points with the intel, with intel, traditional intel. And so there are efforts being done across the portfolios to get after this. I would say we believe that this is very foundational, so our working, that's an active dialogue to figure out what RCO can do to enable the technologies in that mission thread. And then this last one is purposely vague. So when you look at the portfolios that we have and the capabilities and the gaps, I think what we're looking for are smaller things and prototypes that we can do to enable the better and more rapid detection of threats, whether they be cyber threats or countering kinetic threats. This could be looking at cyber methodologies to traditional approaches. So Counter-UAS, traditionally not a cyber approach, more of an EW approach. Maybe there's a cyber way to do it that is more effective for the warfighter. Things like that are how I think cyber can be a game changer for what's traditionally more of a kinetic based approach. I think that's what I had for that, and so I'll pause for when you'll finish, and then we'll do questions at the end. So okay, sounds good. All right.
Unless there's specific cyber questions now. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll turn it back to Rob and look forward to conversing afterwards.
Just a couple more topics to cover. So we talked a little bit about doing some things fast. So we have at least out there right now a BAA that we're able to leverage. I know some of you are tracking this. It's just something that you could set up some alerts on FBO or grants.gov to follow the BAA. We actually had put the challenge out associated to the BAA, so it was able to get out to a large number of folks, at least on the FBO world. Did some also articles, etc. But it covers a whole wide variety of areas. The things that we somewhat talked about, focus areas, as well as other things in disruptive technology. So you might be seeing some other RFIs coming out on there upcoming. So I definitely would say to go find this. An easy link, instead of writing that whole thing down, is going to our Rapid Capabilities Office website. There's a link directly to it on FBO, so that'll help you there. But really, the best part there is you have the ability to do different types of awards through it, and RCO is been pretty good at that. We're actually going through a little one right now that we're doing for some efforts, and doing procurement contracts, etc., OTAs. I know that's the buzzword that's out there right now. But anyway, just want to put that out there again for folks that might not have known that we have a BAA out there. To follow that, set up your FBO alerts or whatever to track that for any things that we associate to it. So we'll put special announcements that are directly associated to that BAA, and that's when you're able to submit white papers. And I think this is my last slide, and then definitely want to go into questions and answers, but just wanted to hit a topic of what we had talked about last year at TechNet, and we did throughout this year, and it's actually just closed, is the Signal Classification Challenge. So last year at TechNet, we put out the area of applying AI to EW, and come talk to us, basically what we asked for. and we had a whole bunch of folks, different types of areas, applying AI to EW. But specifically, what we got at the first go around was a challenge that we had put out to leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning for signal classification, and we put it out through challenge.gov, and we put the data set out there, and we had, I think, over 150 teams or so participating in that, and it just closed. So there's some great performers out there, so it was really good to see the competition over, I think, approximately 90 days that challenge had run. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there, that was something we had done based on some of the discussions that we had last year at TechNet, and I hope to do more of these challenges and prototype efforts, et cetera, and things in the cyberspace that Jack was talking about, and really any of those other topic areas, because I think there's some good capabilities that I've seen that I'd like to see how we can implement that for Army use. I think that is my get off the stage slide. Just questions or contact, visit us, email us, follow us, and like I had mentioned, if you want to find these slides as well as the FBO link, go to the rapidcapabilitiesoffice.army.mil website, and you're able to find these slides, find the FBO link, submit technologies that goes into Vulcan, which anybody on the government side would be able to then see, so it just benefits industry overall. And that's it. So I think we'll just open it up to
just one quick point on that last chart. And U.S. Cyber Command didn't pay me to say this, but U.S. Cyber Command up at Fort Meade awarded a partnership intermediary agreement this spring. It's called Dreamport, and the site is dreamport.tech. I say that because it's the cyber works of the Northeast, and we're looking to potentially leverage that as a mechanism to get after some of the cyber prototyping efforts.
Maybe we could put a link on our page.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Questions, comments?
All right. I was at a AUSA breakfast with Ostrowski, the Military for the AAE, of course, and he mentioned two gifts from Congress, the OTA, and the second one was Section 804 of NDAA 19, which authorizes rapid prototyping and rapid capabilities. Are you guys taking advantage of that, and if so, how?
Yeah. So absolutely. 804 is a great tool. I think the formal implementation guidance is coming out for the Army, and it's encouraged across the Army PEOs. I think we will use it where it makes sense for a rapid prototyping or rapid fielding effort, but I don't know that this second we have a program that we're considering for it. But it's absolutely something we recognize as a tool that would support some of our projects. Does that make sense, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that our KO and folks within the acquisition cell and the RCO provided input, tracking 804, depending, like Jack said, based on the efforts. We leverage the tools that are available to us. Haven't used it yet, but absolutely, we're able to leverage that.
What's your relationship with exercises like CyberQuest, where companies respond to specific pick-up requirements, they're down selected, they're brought in for experimentation and testing. If out of that exercise there is a technology that particularly the DMs would like to then further review, can they leverage the BAA to actually bring that technology into the lab for further experimentation?
You want to get the CyberQuest part?
Yeah. So one, first we're absolutely familiar with and are increasingly integrated into those CyberQuest, CyberBlitz, and those types of activities. We the RCO. So you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'll just hit the BAA. where there's, for example, Cyber SU has been the focus of CyberQuest. So where there's a need that the TICM and the community wants the RCO to take on to move quickly and prototype further following CyberQuest, we would potentially use that BAA to drop a special notice and move out. So that's one of the vehicles we would use. I would couch it like that, though, that if we were the partner for a follow-on engagement, we would use the BAA as the mechanism to do so, more so than the TICM using that BAA for them. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not guaranteed that it's going to be a procurement contract or an OTA. We may do a CRADA or something like that. Like you said, if you wanted to bring it in a lab, maybe it's some cooperative work that we need to do on the effort to see how well it matures or it gets some user feedback, et cetera. So again, the tools are there for us to leverage. We'll leverage the right tool. But yes, we could use the BAA to do something like that.
Hi. Are there any particular technologies that you all are seeing, without necessarily naming names, that are trending up with respect to OTA attention, that are successfully getting OTAs in the past year? And if so, can you give maybe a use case, again, without naming a particular company, of how they walked through the process, how long it took, that type of thing?
So I'm not sure I can answer the trends discussion. We've certainly had in the Army success using OTAs from a couple years ago on the DCO portfolio initially, and now it continues to be a key tool for the PM to do the rapid prototyping and delivery. But I don't have the answer on the broader trends across the use of OTAs, though, unless Rob, you have any insight.
Yeah, that's consortium-wise, right? Yeah, absolutely. So the point here with the OTA that we would do a direct OTA with the vendor. RCO has a warrant to be able to do that. So you don't necessarily need to be a part of a consortium to leverage the OTA. But again, back to trends, no, I don't have a good answer for that either. It's just good.
We'll follow up.
Override cost share or small business requirement.
Yes.
The direct OTA contracting capability. So it doesn't come with some of those artificial adders, I'd say, that you find in those consortium-based sessions. The need is right, and to not destroy the individual companies' IP and what they're bringing, those capability set. If you want to get, you don't force an artificial, you got to have a small business that's doing something, you must share one-third cost share with the major. So a lot of people don't realize that RCO directly can do an OTA.
It's a menu. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Thank you.
Can you elaborate a little more on the rapid prototyping process and some of your just basic expectations for industry, things that we should consider?
So what I would expect is it's a back and forth relationship on the effort, especially leveraging the BAA. We have the ability to have a demonstration as the input for the BAA. And then from the next steps would be whatever, we'd have to figure out what the right contractual vehicle is for us to then do the rapid prototyping effort. And then I guess expectations on industry side, what type of feedback you would want from the government on the effort, right? So we want to make sure that you get the right feedback for the capability, so you could either help advance that prototype or help advance research in that area. So for instance, we didn't do a specific prototyping effort, but we did an alternative PNT experiment on where we brought users in. So our ability to bring users in to give feedback is something that we want to leverage more and more within the RCO. So that double helix of giving feedback back into the development environment is what we'd expect. So being able to bring users in to give that user input so we could rapidly address whatever that change needs to be, and then we can move forward from there. So I don't know if that was a good enough answer, but I think it's just that cyclical approach of us being able to talk back and forth, I think, is what we'd expect. Jack, anything else? No? Good.
Can you guys talk a little bit more about how you come up to your focus areas? I know you said you get it primarily from your board of directors, but I'm curious as whether it's identifying known gaps within our system or whether it's identifying capabilities from an adversarial perspective that need to be addressed.
So I think you're talking from a cyber perspective or anything?
From an anything perspective.
So I guess there's a couple parts to it. So there is direct user engagements with user pack, what do I want to say? The ARCIC, getting some of the capability needs analysis done. Is there any gaps that are defined there? Those are some of the areas that we get some of the gaps from. And then from a cyber perspective, I would say, yeah, it's probably the same thing, getting feedback from users.
Yeah, for sure. So this is like a philosophical debate we have a lot about where the needs come from, exactly, and whether it's the users, whether it's the user representatives, or whether it's through engagements with innovative technology offices. So I think we try to do a little bit of everything. So from the cyber perspective, we try to be positioned where we're dialoguing with places like DARPA, SCO, and other offices that are already challenging what could be done, while we're having an aggressive dialogue with both the users, the cyber users here at Fort Gordon, Fort Meade, and also the folks that are really driving the longer-term modernization priorities in this cross-functional teams, which we meet with regularly at this point. So I have a debate with a colleague all the time about whether how to even order a sentence. Do we engage in technology and see what's out there, or do we start with the user? And I think it's a circular process that isn't that we're both right.
Anything else?
Yeah.
In your diagram, you talked about various cyber capabilities you're looking into. Do you have any expectation our industry will come to with integrated solutions, or can we come to you with an element of, your expectations?
Sure. I would probably expect the ability or willingness to integrate, but I probably would be looking for pieces of the solution that then we could work the integration through various vehicles. But yeah, in terms of the convergence and integration with an EW or space and a cyber capability, I'm not sure what that looks like in terms of an integrated solution yet, but certainly would be interested in that. But right now, I think we would recognize that there would be some initial prototyping, and then we'd work our way towards integration.
Yeah, from an industry perspective, I have the same concern that
Yeah.
How much money do we have to spend to build something that fulfills a capability for you that we don't know if there's going to be any kind of synergy there.
Right. Yeah. So we'd probably start the conversations earlier in the process than go and invest in this massive integrated solution. I think that's a journey we have to kind of step our way through together. Yes.
Yeah, so kind of following up on his question, you mentioned research and experiments and integration. So what level of technology readiness levels, is there a standard or requirement or guideline before someone submits something that you're looking for?
No. No, really, because I mean, so there's a couple. I guess there's a. I guess it goes back to that philosophical point, right? If you don't know that something's out there or being worked on, I guess I forget. I think it was General Pace was saying it, right? You know, you were given users a 5 capability, and they didn't know there was a 9 out there, right? So we may want to know that there's that 9 capability that's out there, but it's, you know, at TRL level 3 right now. Okay, great. We know it's there. We know industry's starting to work on that area, or they're not working on that area. Hey, maybe you may want to start looking at applying artificial intelligence for, you know, us going, whatever, the teleportation or something, right? Whatever it is. Something that we need that might not be being worked on today. We need to know it at least to at least have the conversation. And then from leveraging a capability, I would say it depends on how long it would take it to go from a certain TRL to something that is deployable. It's a rough answer to say it depends, but it really does. It might take industry or academia or whoever's is working on it. It might take 6 months and a couple $1 million to take it from a 3 to a 7 or an 8. All right, let's try to do that. Jack, any other thoughts?
I mean, probably not looking at TRL 1. But to Rob's point, I think that the observation that I would have is that there's a lot of, and I think we're starting to break through this, but there are silos and communities in our cyber in the formation jointly that are doing different things, and some efforts might be a TRL. They think they're doing something and it's a 5 or a 3 but there's already something that's a 7 or 8,
right.
And so I think we're in our respective focus areas looking to break those silos down so that we're not waiting for something that already exists out there. Justin, go ahead.
As a user rep,
Softball.
If I have an operator that came to me with a requirement, we don't have a validated JSON document or NONs, how would we get that into the rapid capability office to begin prototyping on something like that?
Okay, I'll start. So the requirements discussion is mature. So the RCO gets requirements in a number of ways. It doesn't have to be a JSON document. It could be a directive from the board of directors, and as I think Rob said, our board of directors is the secretary, the chief of staff, and the AAE, Dr. Jetty. And so that requirement could be a memo. It could be a directive to go assess something, do a demonstration. So I think what we're seeing is that if you have a need, or a user comes and tells you you have a need, you don't want to have to tell the user to wait 2 years for a JSIS document PBB to go on. You would want to be able to start that process immediately. And so maybe that would be something, if it exceeded it's a crowded space. So Army Cyber Command has acquisition authority to a certain echelon just for that purpose. But where it exceeds that, maybe that is where the RCO would be engaged by General Morrison or General Fogarty to initiate some kind of a prototyping effort while we looked at what that requirement ultimately becomes, if as part of an existing program of record or not. But we do have, I think, some additional flexibility versus a traditional PM, which does kind of need ultimately the JSIDs to drive what they're doing. Rob, does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I know, and I don't think we had mentioned this before, so I apologize, and I apologize to our new director, Ms. Skeen. If folks hadn't known, Mr. Wiltsey had retired back in April, and Ms. Tanya Skeen is our new director, and she has daily discussions with the secretary and the AE and on different areas. Absolutely, it may be even just going to talk to them, say, hey, we want to go do a prototyping effort in this area to even see if it's realm possible, or do some analysis to see if it's realm possible, and that's some of the things that we have been doing and will continue to do. So it could be easy as that.
Joe.
So given that a large portion of the cyber user community is here in Florida, are there any plans for you guys to expand your offices footprint down here potentially, or there's too early to say?
would say there's not currently a plan. We definitely recognize that this is the center of gravity, and so we're thinking about it. But I know that the RCO is our footprint is growing and is really becoming more of a permanent footprint at Fort Belvoir and the Pentagon, and those facilities are under construction as we speak. So I think ultimately we recognize this is a center of gravity, but there's no current plan.
And I'll put this out there right now because I know folks haven't asked it yet, but we don't know if we're going to be putting a presence at Army's Futures Command either, right? We don't know where that's going to play or where we're going to fall with respect to Army Futures Command yet, but it's all up in the air. Questions, comments? I really appreciate it, folks. I think.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, we're around. Jack and I are around.
I'll be here till I just have to get the car out of the garage by 6. So.
Yeah. I gotta get to Atlanta for a flight in a little while, but I'll be around. Thank you. Appreciate it.